When I speak of a category, I speak not of absolute states, but of potentials. I speak only of probabilities, never about certainties. This is why I speak of superior and inferior, never of absolute, never of omnipotent, omniscient. I never speak of the perfect. When I say a polar bear, without knowing anything specific about the particular bear, I can be relatively certain that this creature will be within a specific height, weight, shape range, with a particular look and pigmentation, and with an overall behavioral pattern. When I say chimpanzee, I may not know much about the specific creature, the individual organism, but I know enough about the pattern encompassed by the word chimp to place it within limitations concerning all the traits characterizing this general type of phenomenon, this organic pattern we call a species. Similarly, when I speak of females and males, I mean a general type, evolved with particular physical and psychological and mental traits, falling within an upper and a lower limit, a type meant to facilitate a particular genetic sexual role. For example, when I say man, they may not know much about the particular one, but I know enough to place him within a probability curve. This man may be an exception to the rule, but the rule places him within a probable size, weight, form, pigmentation, intelligence ratio. All of science is such an evaluation of general categories from a small sampling group. We can say that the mind's ability to extrapolate correct probabilities from a smaller sample group determines its intelligence, or its capacity to perceive patterns other minds cannot. Obviously, this does not mean that all such extrapolations are equally valid or invalid, since the sophistication of the mind forming them and projecting them determines their accuracy and their utility. A more sophisticated mind can retain in memory details which a lesser one cannot, and then combine these details with an immediate phenomenon, finding in the combination a pattern that goes beyond the immediate, the present, the current. Intelligence is this ability to utilize memory, imagination, to integrate details into cohesive mental models, abstractions, which can then be projected as a preemptive method of compensating for immediate deficiencies. This offers the organism, the individual, an advantage, as it compensates, as I said, for a lower aggregate in energies by taking advantage of synergetic focus, just as they do in the martial arts, where a smaller man in mass can overpower a larger one by focusing energies and by taking advantage of a larger percentage of his own aggregate mass. This is called efficiency. The focus of these aggregate energies is done by the will. It is this which makes the feeble Homo sapient capable of overcoming beasts which are larger, faster, and stronger than it is. Man's brain, its ability to see patterns and to utilize them against animals who exist within a limited perceptual event horizon, is what makes man dominate creatures more powerful than he is, and with senses far more acute than the human beings. For this reason, I claim that intelligence, this combination of perceiving patterns, forming them into cohesive mental models, and then projecting them using the imagination into the unknown, the future, is what defines mankind's advantages, and it is what defines man in relation to other organic life. And it is this, and this alone, which I also use to distinguish one man from another, using this standard to determine each individual man's or woman's inferiority and superiority in relation to each other. All value judgments are comparisons, after all. I accept the sexual definition of species, but in order to make my understanding more precise, I go further along the path, being unable to remain on that simplistic level. It is a mind's ability to think beyond the particularities of a time and a place, a cultural milieu, or a civilization, and its ability to think abstractly and emotionally, honestly and clearly, in that there are no contradictions in his worldview. This is what I mean by clearly. This is what separates it from all other minds. This is what makes it exceptional and rare. An animal lives in the moment. An animal has no capacity to think historically, unable to take previous actions as an indication of future ones, to the extent that man can. An animal lives intuitively, spontaneously, uncritically, instinctively, as a mere automatic reaction to stimuli. And because there are no absolutes, we can only judge a mind by how much of its animal nature it can control, without being tempted to dismiss and to reject and to deny. Therefore, each particular manifestation of the species, Homo sapient, will be judged qualitatively, not absolutely. Each man is more or less aware, never omniscient, more or less strong, never omnipotent, more or less masculine or feminine, never ideally either. I could have called it domestication of man or institutionalization of man, but feminization is more appropriate, as it connects the phenomenon to its basic foundation, human sexuality, and how this is part of a method for dealing with mortality. Feminization is more appropriate, without meaning to diminish females by using them as indications of human decay. So when I speak of feminization, I include in this both men and women, for both men and women contain both the masculine and the feminine traits to varying degrees. So feminization also includes females. The female sexual type is more malleable, more controllable, more susceptible to domination. The system will always prefer females and emasculated males. Whether these males are emasculated by force or are stunted at birth and not allowed to mature into men is but a matter of circumstance. When we speak of feminization, we speak of domestication, indoctrination, sheltering, resulting in a stunting of development. Is not a dog a stunted wolf? Have not the most infantile female traits been bred into dogs to make them more malleable, more controllable, less dangerous to man? Females despise each other more than they resent men. The idea that women organized and carried out a social coup, essentially overturning thousands of years of paternalism in the span of a few decades, with no bloodshed, is inane and void of any understanding of history and how changes come about. It took revolutions with countless dead to bring about Marxism or to enforce civil rights, and this after a war was fought, hypothetically, over this issue of racial equality. Yet a few women marching with signs is to have caused the presumed but not actual liberation of females. Without male support, feminism would have been dead in the water. Think about the foundations of feminism, its roots. The idea of equality, the idea that all life is precious, valuable, that it should be preserved and protected from the natural culling mechanisms. Think about who maintains female rights, who makes sure that nobody tramples over them, who makes sure that the weaker sex is not exploited by the stronger sex. And then tell me if men are not the ones who proposed and maintain feminism. One can assume that once a particular segment of males rose to power, that in order to maintain themselves there, the easiest way to do so was to eliminate all challengers, to emasculate them, to make challenging itself an evil word, to make violence and masculine traits illegal. In this way, they could hope to not have to worry about being overturned, being overtaken. This is a form of mental castration, a mimetic device where one does not have to engage the physical, just as long as the mind is infected with certain ideas, which essentially make it effete, emasculated. In other words, maintaining it in a state of adolescence, immaturity, where it is disinterested in anything beyond playing games, beyond playing, fully dependent on others for its safety, unable to take personal responsibility, unable to consider the repercussions of its actions and take responsibility for them, always blaming others first and not the self first, and by doing so being unable to grow by learning by previous mistakes. Every gain entails a cost. Every cost entails a gain. When a goal is reached for, there is a risk involved. A mind must evaluate the potential costs and the potential benefits truthfully and not idealistically. A mind must not exaggerate either the cost nor the benefits, for dissatisfaction will be the outcome. We all exploit each other. Women use men and men use women. We are one another's resource. A balanced relationship is one where what is given is not surpassed by what is taken. But the value one places on the given and the taken determines how satisfied one is by the exchange. Only idealistic, romantic simpletons fail to accept this, eventually becoming disillusioned by the real world and reacting in anger. Anger being a defensive mechanism based on fear. They do not blame themselves and their romantic idealism. They blame the other for not living up to their romantic idealism, essentially avoiding the growth this acceptance would entail. When one understands the nature of the beast, one is not hurt by its behavior. One understands mankind, one is not surprised by its many manifestations. When one experiences a dog biting, when one reaches for its food, one does not blame the dog for acting in this way. The first thing one does is one takes responsibility for one's own ignorance about the dog's nature and about the symbolism of reaching for the dog's food. The nature of women now is presented as something new, as if we're rediscovering North America. In fact, many have talked about women and men and their essence, their spirit, their nature. Schopenhauer, Spengler, Nietzsche, and first and foremost in modern times, Weiniger, who wrote entire essays about attraction, about what females are, about what men are, and how they relate. Yet many now present the nature of females as something surprisingly new. The Greeks spoke about women. There was a reason why they talked about how women were incapable of agape and were only capable of eros. There was a reason why the ancient Greeks thought that only men could share agape. It was the Greeks who already knew what these men children now profess to be something new. But what is occurring here is something very Christian. The salvation of mankind, in this case literally mankind, as if all men deserve salvation, or as if all men deserve an excuse to excuse themselves from nature, to excuse themselves from the world, to remain children, to play as children play. In fact, it's this cultural trend which is based on technological advancements and counter conception and in abortions, which has made sexuality into a non-risk behavior, a non-risky behavior. It has taken away the spiritual content, the value of copulation. It has made it into a game indulged in by children. It has made it insignificant, like eating. And then they wonder why sex is so unfulfilling. The basic thing that has been eliminated from sex, as with everything else, is fear. Like I said, the risk, the cost. Everything has been made safe. Nothing has a potential cost, and so nothing has value. This is why men and women no longer are careful about the mates they choose. They never remain loyal to one another. It's a recycled world full of recycling in all areas, including relationships. There's no commitment, no loyalty produced by a shared battle, a shared undertaking, a shared cost benefit. And so everything is made bland, boring, dull, and most minds escape into artificial realities to compensate, to make their lives more interesting, to find meaning, to experience life and living.